Good morning, everyone, and nice to see so many of you here. There are plenty of others arriving too. So I'm Alan Gray. I'm the director of the Association of Youth Orchestras in Ireland, and you're all very welcome here this morning. So this is about our third workshop on Jamulus, and this morning we have Caitlin Kelly, who has been working for us on an online orchestra project, even though the online orchestra is only 8 players, or 8 players plus the director at the moment. But it is going really well, and we're using the opportunity at the moment of people wanting to do stuff online to actually use the technology and move it forward. I won't say much about the Association of Youth Orchestras. We're based in Ireland, and if you want to find out more, you can go to IAYO.ie and find out as much as you want. So we will be recording this morning's session. So if you speak, you'll be in the movie, and if you don't speak, you won't be in the movie. Or if you want to speak and turn off your video, you can do that also. So you can feel free to ask questions either in the chat box, or you can raise your hand later on once Caitlin has finished her presentation. And I think that's really all I have to say on the matter, and I won't take up your time, and we will go to Caitlin, who is going to teach us how to set up Jamulus and considerations involved. So over to you. Thank you, Caitlin.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Just 2 seconds while I share my screen. Can everyone see this okay?
That's yes.
Perfect. Okay, so good morning. My name is Caitlin Kelly. I am the technical lead in IAYO for the online orchestra project. We've been working together since February, and I helped get the tech side of stuff set up. So I set up the server, I teach the musicians how to use the software, and then I'm on site for troubleshooting for every session on Saturday. My contact details are here. This is my business email, and then if you have any questions for IAYO or you want to find out about any more of their programs, you can find them here at info@iayo.ie and at www.iayo.ie as well. So what I will be covering today with you. So what is Jamulus? So what is the software? What does it do? What equipment you'll need. So before doing this workshop, I tested out a bunch of interfaces to see what works best with Jamulus and what is budget friendly. So, you know, it's something that'll work without breaking the bank. And then we'll also be covering how to set up a server. Now, I will go over this kind of not super detailed during the talk today, just because I think it would be a bit much to go through line by line of code, but in the booklet that will be sent out after this, that will be available to everyone, all the code that you need that you can just copy and paste into your terminal, which I'll go through what all that means in a few minutes, will be available. So, and then how to set it up on your computer. So I'll cover how to set it up on Windows and Mac, and is there anything that I should avoid doing? So kind of do's and don'ts and other considerations going forward with this software. So what is Jamulus? Jamulus is a low latency audio streaming software. So you can use it for just playing music with your friends or rehearsing. And to use it, you don't need a super special internet connection. It doesn't have to be super fast. You need standard broadband and Ethernet cable. So as well as that, just if anyone is wondering what latency is referring to the time delay that you hear between you and the other musicians. So anyone who has any experience trying to run any sort of musical workshop over Zoom or Skype or your video call platform of choice, the audio tends to be quite frustrating to try and work with from a rehearsal standpoint, if not impossible. Due to the delay between you and other musicians. So Jamulus is kind of the remedy for that, if that makes sense. So as I mentioned already, it works with Windows and Mac. It also works with Linux, but for the purposes of the workshop today, I'll be covering Windows and Mac as I don't have enough experience with Linux. So just as a side note, if you are thinking of getting started with the software and you've never used it before, it will only work on a computer. It's not going to work on a tablet. There's no patch for that. It is a computer-only software. We got caught out by this once or twice when we were getting started. So just so that you know before you get into it, it is computer-only. So equipment you'll need. Well, you're going to need an audio interface. So that's like a USB audio interface is the ones that I'll be talking about today. So it's just a little box that you can plug your microphone into and plug it into your computer, sorry, so that you can have the audio, yep. A microphone, an XLR lead, so that's to connect the microphone to the audio interface. A mic stand, because you're not going to be able to hold the microphone while you're playing your instrument. Headphones or earphones, these are important because you're not going to get audio out of your interface otherwise. An adapter for said headphones. Some headphones come with the correct jack, but for an audio interface, typically you will need a 6.3 millimeter jack, not a mini jack. Your normal headphone connector will not work. You will need to get an adapter. But I have, in the book that I'll be sending out, there are links for everything that you need to buy in there. So you can just click them, it'll take you to what you need. So there's no stress there. And you'll need an Ethernet cable to plug into your router. Now, some computers don't have an Ethernet port, so you may need to get an adapter, but those are typically very easy to find. It's just Ethernet to USB connector. So there's a huge variety of USB interfaces available, and getting a good cheap interface is doable. It's possible, but don't automatically go for the cheapest one, because quite often they might not have a audio driver, which you will need with a Windows computer. So these are some of the interfaces that I tested, and out of all the ones that I tested about 6 or 7 different interfaces. These are the ones that worked best, most consistently with Jamulus on both Windows and Mac devices. I imagine these would work well with Linux as well. So the PreSonus Audio Box 90. So it's a 2x2 interface. PreSonus are really good. They come with a universal control, so there's a huge variety of drivers that come with that, and one of them will work. It also comes with like the ability to adjust device options like sample rate and stuff, which is very handy, and I'll get into that later. The Steinberg UR12. So this is a little bit more expensive, but it works just as well. So if the audio box isn't available, or you're just wanting to get a slightly shinier box, the Steinberg is very good. And then the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. This is one of the boxes that is used by one of the members of the orchestra. This is, again, it's a very good one. But it is a bit more expensive. However, if you're working with one of the newer MacBooks, it does have a USB-C connection. So if there's no 2.0 or 3.0 connections, this is an option for you. So microphones. These are 2 that I have tried and tested myself. So the Thomann own brand mic is excellent. It works really well. Unless you're looking to get very specific mics, like specific condensers made for your instrument, these will do. These are great. So it's a good budget microphone, and it comes in a bundle for about 63 euros with the XLR and the mic stand, so you don't need to worry about getting them. And then if you're just wanting to get a slightly fancier one, again, the Shure SM57 is a great microphone, and it will suit the purposes of this, but you will need to get the XLR and stuff separately. So that might be a bit of a no-go for some people. So once you have everything, you can connect your USB interface to your computer and download the audio driver. For the audio interfaces that I've discussed today, I will make links to where you can download the drivers for them available after the talk. So you'll be able to find them easily. And then once you have your headphones and microphone connected to the interface and connected to Jamulus, you can increase your gain and headphone output volume. But when you are doing that, make sure not to go wild with the gain and turn it up all the way. If you can't hear your mic, check other solutions first and make sure that you've connected to a server. because you don't want to accidentally turn the gain up all the way and then connect to something else and blow your ears off. So if anyone has any questions so far, please feel free to send them into the chat. What a Yeti work to, as it has a built-in interface. I've not tested a Yeti, but you can try it. I'll get to the rest of every single player need an interface. You will need a microphone and headphones. You'll need and an audio driver. So sort of would be my answer. Will each musician singer need every item on the list? I would recommend yes. I know it seems like a lot, but if you want to get the high quality audio and you want it to stream properly and stuff, having tested these and having worked with lower quality interfaces and stuff, it doesn't work as well. Zoom R8. I've not tested it. If you could DPA mic, you don't need another mic, no. Now I'll get back to the rest of the question. Does every participant need? Every participant will need an interface, yes. Zoom R8. I'll get back to the Zoom R8 question at the end. And do I need an interface, a USB connected to my microphone? You can test it. I would recommend the interface, but for now, I will get back to the server slides and I'll answer more questions at the end if that's okay. So how to set up a server. So there's a variety of different services that you can use to set up a server. So there's Amazon Web Services Lightsail program, which should have a T there. There's DigitalOcean and there's Linode. But for the sake of today's talk, I would recommend Amazon Web Services. This is what I have used since starting with IAYO, and it's been very consistent. It's easy to use, and the servers are based in Ireland, so the ping times are decent. The first thing you'll need to do is make an Amazon Web Service account. So that's very straightforward. You just go on to AWS and make an account there. And then you'll want to go and navigate to their Lightsail program. So you can do that. There's a little search bar up at the top. You can just type in Lightsail and it'll bring it up for you. So once you've got that open, you'll want to click Create Instance. So this will bring up this menu screen here. Here. So for the sake of Jamulus, honestly, the $3.50 works really, really well. This is what we have been using. It's got everything you need. You don't need anything like super fancy, and the amount of storage and the CPU it all works perfectly for Jamulus. So sorry. Now that you've set up the instance, you can start going through the following options. So you can set the instance location. So if you're based in Ireland, then you can set it to Ireland, but they do have servers based in different places in the EU as well. And they have servers based in America. So there's a huge choice. You should probably be able to find a server based in your country if you are coming to us today, not from Ireland. So you'll want to set the platform here to Linux, and then you'll want it to be OS only. Make sure that it is OS only because you don't want to have to try and deal with another app already being built into the server. We want a nice clean slate to install Jamulus onto. And then set your OS to Ubuntu 18.04. Now, I cannot state it enough. Make sure it is 18.04 or you will be in for hours of frustration trying to get it work on the other Ubuntu versions. From someone who has tried to get it working on the other Ubuntu versions. I do not recommend it. So after you've done that, you can open the terminal. So to open the terminal, you need to click this little button here, and that'll bring up this window. So this is your terminal. This is where all the coding will be taking place. Oh, we jumped forward. Anything in the next section or in the booklet where I'm talking about the terminal, this is what I'm referring to. So this is definitely where the booklet will be most useful because you can just copy and paste the code. It's color coded and everything, so you'll be able to tell it apart from the normal text. And the first kind of half of the programming will be dedicated to just installing the actual software onto the server. So Once you have that installed, you can set your preferences in the VI window. So the VI window is a little bit different to the actual terminal itself. Like it's still in the terminal window, but it's different to what you would have been doing so far, because it's the way that you enter it, you just copy and paste the whole block as opposed to copying and pasting it line by line. So you can set your preferences. So all the things that you can adjust. So like the name of your server, the IP address being public or private, the number of available channels, and all that fun stuff, where you're located, your welcome message. So this little block here. You can adjust all of that to your preferences, and you can change the country code as well. So for Ireland, it's 104, but there are other country codes available if you are not based in Ireland. Also, as a side note, pertaining to the number of channels, so far I've tested up as far as 20 channels, but I am reasonably confident that I could probably go up to 30 on this server. After that, I wouldn't be certain. You may need to get a slightly more heavy duty server after that point. So once you've done that, you exit the VI window, which again, it's covered in more detail in the book. And you enable Jamulus, and then we move on to setting up the static IP. So when you set up a Lightsail server, it'll have a dynamic IP by default. So essentially, a static IP is an IP address that doesn't change. Dynamic changes. So that's fine, but it makes it significantly more difficult for people to consistently connect to the server each week. And it's nice to just have the standing IP address there for people, and it just works better. So a static IP is a permanent IP address that allows you to connect to your server for as long as it exists. Now, if you finish up with Lightsail and you get rid of your server, make sure that when you're doing that, you also delete the IP address, because otherwise they will stay charging you for that. As long as it's connected to an instance, you don't pay for it, it's free. But as soon as it's disconnected from the instance, you will be paying more for it, just as a quick side note. So to set up the IP address, you click manage here. So you bring that up by clicking the three little dots that are beside the terminal window, as shown in the graphic. Then you go to the networking tab and you click create static IP. So make sure that the instance is attached, as I mentioned already, and then name your IP. So you can name it the same thing as your server. There's not going to be any issue there. And then once you click create, the IP address is ready to go. And then adjusting the firewall so people can actually connect to the server. This was brought up to me at the start of the talk, so this is how to do that. So the first thing you need to do is navigate to the firewall section. So you do that the same way that you navigate to the networking section, by clicking manage and then firewall. Then you're going to want to add rule. And then in that little dialog that'll pop up, you'll want to change TCP to UDP, and then drop down the custom line. And in the port range edit box, you want to enter these numbers. Now this will all be in booklet as well, so if you don't have time to like write it down or something, it's fine, it will be in the book. But that's basically how you do that. And once you click create, you're done, your server is ready to go. Grant, how to set up Jamulus on your computer. So to start with, Jamulus is much easier to use with macOS than it is with Windows. So if you are someone who's looking at getting into it for the first time and you don't have a computer yet, and you're looking at getting a computer specifically to use this software, I would recommend going for a Mac. I know that they can be a bit more pricey, but even like a secondhand one will work perfectly. My computer is from 2015 and it runs Jamulus a lot better than its newer Windows counterpart. So if you're kind of on the fence there, definitely go for a Mac. It'll make your life so much more straightforward. So you can get the software from the Jamulus website, jamulus.io. Previous iterations, they'd redirect you to SourceForge, but for the most recent update, you can just get it straight off the website now. And then the software will download and you can install a file by opening the DMG, which is a disk image, that's the Mac execution file, and then or the exe file on Windows. Okay. So how to set Jamulus up for Mac. Just gonna move the people. There we go. Sorry, the cameras were blocking the text. Okay, so for Mac users, once you've installed the disk image, you should be able to start up Jamulus. The first time you run Jamulus, you might need to open it by holding down the shift key and right-clicking on the application icon. So this is just a safety feature that Apple has installed, where if it's not a recognized developer or from the App Store, that it won't open it unless you are very sure and you have to force it to open, essentially. So once you've opened the software, you're going to want to click into the button that says Settings. And that'll bring up this window. So once you have this window up, you can click the sound card device drop-down menu. And this will bring up the inputs and outputs that you have on your computer. So the great thing about Mac is you can actually set different inputs and outputs from different devices without having to use something like Asio for all. So you can set your headphone output in your computer and the interface input, which you can't do in Windows unless you download a rerouting software like Asio for all. If you do decide that you want to use your computer output instead of the interface output, then just select those from the little drop-down menu, and you're good to go. So for Windows users, when using Jamulus, make sure all your other software are closed. Having other software open can interfere with the audio settings. So if you're having a Zoom meeting right before you open up Jamulus, make sure that you have the software closed, because otherwise the audio device might not connect. I don't know why this happens, it just does. Jamulus on Windows just doesn't like any other software using audio at the same time. So once you've installed the exe, you should be able to start up Jamulus, and you click the button that says Settings, and it'll bring up, just like on the Mac, this window. It's pretty much the same, but pointier at the edges. So again, you want to click the sound card device drop-down menu. Now this is a bit different to the Mac, because you can only click the one option. You can't modify it to your own tastes, unfortunately. So you're going to want to switch the sound card to the driver that matches your USB interface, or if you're experimenting with Asio for all, then select that. And then once you have the software installed and set up, you can connect to the server that you made earlier. Just as a side note, if you are using Asio for all, or if the driver that you are using is Asio based, this little button down the bottom will say Asio settings, so you can adjust the settings of your interface. So things like the sample rate, the bit depth and stuff, those will all be adjustable there. And some interfaces have you adjust the buffer delay within their settings as opposed to here. So you may need to look into that if you're having issues with the buffer. So just some things to note. When you're adjusting the volume of different players and stuff on your mixer, it's only going to adjust your personal mix. So like you can turn people up and down as loud or as quiet as you want. If someone's coming through really, really loud for you, you can turn them down. It won't affect anyone else's volume, just yours. And if you bring your own level down, again, that's just your own mix. The same goes for if you click the mute button on your own screen. So if you're wanting to mute yourself in the software, there's a button above the settings button that you click that says mute myself, and that's how to make sure other people won't hear you. And it will tell you that other people can't hear you. So if it doesn't say that, then people can hear you. So as I mentioned already, having Zoom or any other video streaming or video call software open at the same time will cause issues. It's just messy. We've tried recording Zoom and Jamulus at the same time, and both software saw complete, what's the word? The performance was bad. It just was not good. There's a better way of saying it, but it's eluding me right now. So if you are wanting to record video and stuff, I would recommend either setting up like a smartphone or a camera beside you and just recording that way, because there's just no point in trying to use Zoom or Microsoft Teams or anything at the same time. So a few other bits, the sample rate. Now I got into this a little bit earlier. So the reason that it's important to check this is because it needs to be at 48K. Sometimes the audio driver will default it to 44.1K and that's going to cause issues. So this happened to us during one of our sessions a couple of weeks ago, where one of the musicians was perceiving all of the other players as playing flat, and he assumed that maybe he had been sent the wrong sheet music, and he tried to compensate for it, but they were all perceiving him as sharp. So the reason that happened is because his sample rate was lower, and to try and compensate for that, the software ended up pitch shifting people. So just if you hear everyone else as flat and they hear you as too sharp, just go check that your sample rate is correct, because otherwise you'll just get very frustrated. So another thing, due to a variety of internet speeds, some people's signals are just noisier and weaker than others, and this can vary session by session. So if your setup is absolutely perfect one week and you change nothing and none of the settings are after changing themselves, like there's a little drop-down menu that you can change from mono to stereo in the Jamulus settings window. If none of those have changed on their own and you've checked them, sometimes it's just a bad week. Don't worry too much. Sometimes there's just going to be weeks where things just don't really want to work for no apparent reason. It's frustrating, but genuinely, like, if your setup is perfect, then don't try changing it too much for one bad week. So Asio for All, what is it? Asio for All is a low latency audio driver. So we've discussed latency already. There's very little delay between the software moving stuff, essentially. I phrased that very badly, I apologize. In terms of Asio for All, it'll take audio from different devices within your computer, including the Windows driver model inputs, so your headphone jack, your USB inputs and stuff, and it'll also take your interface inputs and outputs, and it'll allow you to kind of map those, similarly to the way that you can do automatically on a Mac. So for example, as I mentioned, you can use your computer output and headphones with the USB interface at the same time when you're using the software. However, this software only like recently got updated for the first time since 2017. And that update is still in beta, so it's still being tested. It doesn't work flawlessly, and it doesn't always work well with Jamulus. It's caused several issues for us along the way because the original interface that we were using required it as the audio driver, which is, again, make sure that your interface has its own driver. But because we had to use it, it ended up causing several issues. There were inputs not detected. Sometimes the sample rate would just force itself to the 44. There's unavailable inputs. There was a bug called the wave synth bug, where it would just not let you use certain outputs because it was apparently being used by another software that wasn't open. There are a few other issues as well. But if you want to try out Asio for All anyway, this is how. So you'll need to download the driver from asioforall.org, and once you've downloaded it, you can install it using the exe file. If you are working, just as a side note, if you're working off an Apple device, you don't need to get this. This is purely for Windows users. So once you've downloaded it, you can open the Jamulus software and you can set Asio for All as the audio driver in the little sound card drop-down menu we were discussing earlier. And then you click Asio settings, and that will bring up this window. So you can use this window to adjust your Asio settings. So to do so, I'll just go back to the previous screen for a second. You click this. So this is how you bring up the advanced settings, and there will be a big red cross through when the advanced settings are open. So you click the wheel at the bottom right, and this will allow you to adjust the specific inputs and outputs by clicking the little plus beside everything's name. And you can disable stuff that you aren't using. So, and again, make sure this little box, always resample, is ticked, because, yeah, you want it to be 48K. And you can adjust your buffer size in this window as well. So as I mentioned earlier, some Asio drivers will have you adjust the buffer within the driver itself as opposed to in the little window. So if you're wanting to bring it down to the recommended 256, you can do that here with this slider. So do's and don'ts. So don't go for an interface just because it's the cheapest. I know I've said it already, but it's worth restating. Spending a small bit more money will mean less hassle and better audio quality. Don't have Zoom or any other bandwidth heavy software like Netflix or something running at the same time as Jamulus. So just try to only have Jamulus, and if you're using it like an audio, like a digital audio workspace open at the same time, it'll just go better for you. Don't run Jamulus off Wi-Fi. I know it's tempting to just not get the Ethernet cable and just it'll be fine, but no, it won't be fine. You need the Ethernet cable. This is the thing with ping times. So I actually think I received a question via email about someone being very close to their server. So this is in reference to you. So the thing with ping times is it's affected by the path that the signal has to take, because there's it's not just your computer to the server, it's your computer to your router, and then your router to other towers and to other computers to the server. So to speed that up, that's what you need the Ethernet cable for, because it offers a quicker path because you're just connected directly to your router. So just don't run off Wi-Fi. And if you're worried that your interface isn't working, you can use your computer's audio settings to check if the issue is with the interface or with your connection. So you can set the interface as your audio device, and it'll bring up little testing things. It'll bring up a little loading bar for you to show if there's input coming in or not. So that's one way you can check it. So the biggest thing you should avoid doing is giving up. So there's a huge learning curve with any new technology, and you're kind of sitting down to program the server for the first time, and you're looking at all this scary stuff. You will get there. Do not be discouraged. It's going to be fine. So as I mentioned already, it took several weeks and several hiccups, might I add, to get IAYO's online orchestra off the ground. And this is what they sound like now. So this is one of the promo videos that are available. Now, we actually have gotten a clearer signal since then, but this is the video that I wanted to show you guys today, because it's got all our wonderful musicians and Catherine in it, and they're just excellent, and they're excellent to work with. Yes, so you can get there. It will take a little bit of frustration and pulling out of your hair, but you will get there, I promise. So just as a quick slide, this is how I record our Jamulus sessions. Now, again, this is off a Mac system. There are ways to set up the server so that it will record your audio, but I won't be covering that today. However, I will link to the software when this video goes up. I'll make sure that there's a link attached to it for where you can find this program. And there's probably a way to do it through Windows, but I haven't worked it out yet. I've tried a few different methods, so sadly, this is just the Mac method for now. So I use Reaper and Blackhole to record sessions. So Blackhole is, well, I'll cover what it is in the next slide, but it's important to note, if you are using this method to record your sessions, it's going to record your personal mix. So what I recommend doing, and this is what I do each week, is do a sound check with your musicians, and then get the levels like you would with a live gig or an actual recording, and set your levels that way, and then start the recording. That way you can just make small adjustments throughout. So As I mentioned, you're going to need to download Black Hole, or there's other softwares listed below that you can test out if you want to try using this method on Windows. So this is an open source virtual audio driver that allows applications to pass audio to other applications with zero additional latency. So I can set this as my output in Jamulus and my input in Reaper, and it'll just record it over for me. So Black Hole, as I mentioned, is currently an Apple-only software. However, Windows users can try Voicemeeter or Jack Audio Connection Kit if you're wanting to experiment. So once you have your audio routing software downloaded, set it as the output in Jamulus, and then you open Reaper and set Black Hole as your input device and your headphones your output device. Now that's a legacy option, so there's a little box you'll need to tick to do that. But this is the method that I've been using, and it works very well for me. So that's how you record a session using Reaper. So are there other options? So short answer is yes. So this is Jamkazam. So one other software that we're investigating is Jamkazam. We're looking at using this for a possible workshop in the summer for IAYO. Its memberships start at free, but the audio quality is significantly lower on the free plan, and there is no video streaming capability, which would be the main appeal of Jamkazam over Jamulus. So I'll go over all the features of Jamkazam in a moment, but with the gold plan, the sound quality is essentially identical to Jamulus. So if you're only using the audio features, then I would recommend Jamulus every time because it's free. However, if you do decide to go down the Jamkazam path, there are some noteworthy features. So as I mentioned previously, there are video streaming capabilities. So you can stream to each other with zero latency as well, or what, not zero, that's just not going to happen. Low latency video and low latency audio to go with it. And that way you kind of get around the problem of trying to see each other on Zoom and Zoom causing Jamulus to crash because it's all in one program. It's got a built-in recording tool, so you don't need to worry about that. It's also got the servers built in, so you just need to set up the session through the app. And the audio gear that I already mentioned all works with Jamkazam. I've tested all of them with Jamkazam as well. And you can set your computer output without having to use Asio for all, whether you're running off of Windows or an Apple device. So there's also the option to load up jam tracks. So those are like backing tracks that you can play along with. But again, as I mentioned, this is a subscription-based program. So the cheapest, which is $4.99 a month, you still have a time cap. There's no video, and the audio quality is significantly less than Jamulus on the cheapest plan. So if you're only looking at it for audio purposes, definitely go with Jamulus. So here's a bit of a comparison video just so you can hear it. So this is our Jamulus recording, as you heard already. And this is our Jamkazam recording. So as you can see, the audio quality is essentially identical. So the option is there. So that's kind of it. So I'll go through the chat for all the questions, and I have one or two that were given to me at the start that I will answer now. And if anyone kind of just wants to ask if they're feeling brave and want to be on the video, then feel free.
Hi, Caitlin. I'll cut in there and give you a break for a moment. So
Thank you. I'm going to drink some water.
I've been monitoring the chat so I can go through some of the comments and stuff like that as well. Do you want to turn off screen share now? So, and then if people put up their hands, we can also see that.
Perfect.
So for anyone there, you should have a little reactions down the bottom of your screen where you can put up your little virtual hand, or you can continue to add things into the chat. So I probably should have really said beforehand, yes, this video will be available online, so it'll probably take a day or two just to caption it and stuff like that. And Caitlin has made up a booklet which will be distributed to everyone who signed up and will also be available at our website. So I'm fairly well technologically disposed myself, and still it's a huge amount of information to take in one go. In addition, so other types as well. So Caitlin has been working on Jamkazam. There's also Jack Trip, which I think is very, very techy. It's all command line, so you need to know your your actual programming. There's also another one called Digital Stage, which is under development, which was very promising last year, but hasn't really progressed very much. So I'll pop down through some of the questions. One thing, I think possibly there is someone here who knows about setting up Raspberry Pi along with Jamulus. So is there someone here, because I've heard about this. I was most excited when I heard this last week, because a Raspberry Pi is a computer that you can get, I think the cheapest start at £40 sterling, and you can get a full kit for £100 sterling, and it is a full computer, although probably still the most recommended is Mac. So you had already asked, I think, or answered, Caitlin, will the Yeti work? Someone recommended a Thomann SC400 microphone with pop rack 2. Does every single player need an interface? And the answer to that is definitely yes. Yeah. Trying to take part in this using your computer's built-in microphone is really not going to work very well. Will each musician singer need every item on the list? Basically, yes. You know, you need the kit. I mean, I know that in the UK, the Northampton Symphony Orchestra, I think, have managed to develop. They have a set kit that they buy and they lend to people who borrow it, and then once they like it, which they do, they actually buy the kit, and then the orchestra replaces it with a new one. And I think they're coming in for less than £100 sterling for a decent kit. Of course, you need a computer along with that. So someone's mentioned a Zoom or 8 will do the job, ? So I'm
yes,
that
I looked into it there. That should do.
Yeah, I think, Caitlin, actually, you might mention there about just the with the interface, so that the input and the output being through the same source. I think that was.
Yes, no, I think I might have mentioned that. This is particularly important for Windows users. If you are using an interface, you will need to get a headphone adapter, because you'll have to use the inputs and outputs through the same device, unless you're experimenting with Asio for all. But I would recommend having the adapter anyway.
Right. If you have a DPA mic for your instrument, do you need another mic?
No. That's a great mic. I'm jealous. That's an awesome mic. You'll be fine as long as you have the USB interface. The headphones will be sorted.
Yeah. So someone's asking, do I need an interface? I use a USB connected microphone. My headphones are plugged into the microphone. Actually, so that does work, doesn't it?
I think so. Try it. I recommend trying it, because I would kind of stay away from USB microphones and working with Jamulus, just because this is the path that I know I can make the most adjustments and stuff as I go. But test it out. If it works, then fantastic. And if it doesn't, then the options are there for you.
Yeah.
Are wireless earphones? No, don't use wireless earphones. You're just introducing a new way to have latency, and it will just make you sad. Wireless earphones are not for this. Actually, Alan, I have a question that I wrote down that I got at the start. Could I answer that really quickly?
You can indeed, yeah, work away.
Yes. Okay, so I was asked how to see which version of Jamulus that you're running on your computer. So to answer that question, you open Jamulus, you click the Help tab, and then down the bottom you click About, and then that window will open up and the version will be listed on the top left of the window. Does that answer the question? Perfect. Okay.
Good. In terms of, someone asked a question about color coding. So this was in relation to the command line interface, I am guessing.
Yes. Where is the question about color coding? Well, I can make a colorblind version of the book if you need me to. I can make a high contrast mode.
I think, is that possibly actually whoever the person who answered the question or asked the question, I didn't take the name, is that in relation to actually coding on Amazon Lightsail itself, or is that
no, I think it's the book. I actually put all the lines of code in color. They are also in a different font, if that's helpful, because I did actually anticipate this potentially being an issue. There's a different font for all the code. but there's one section where it's red and purple. So if those colors are an issue, I can change them to ones that will work for you if you need me to.
Okay, red on black is the combination.
Red on black, okay.
Good. So someone said there was a limit of 20 to 30 channels. Would this preclude a large orchestra? So the maximum amount of connections allowed in Jamulus, standard Jamulus at the moment is 50, I believe. I don't know though, Caitlin, would that be actual, is that like manageable? Will it actually work, or is it they allow 50 but it won't work properly?
In theory, it should work. We've got 10 and it works perfectly. I can see it working with a decent amount more. I don't know if we get as far as 50. It's worth testing, but what you can always do is you can set up 2 servers and have half and half, so 25 and 25 for rehearsal purposes.
And on 2 different servers, can they hear each other?
No, unfortunately, I'm just saying in terms of like as a rehearsal space for people.
Yeah. Okay. Someone I see you say, yay, Reaper, excellent software.
Yes, it is. It's my favorite.
But they also asked, or someone else asked, what about Pro Tools?
I think Pro Tools works with Black Hole. I'll check for you. Most of my experience would be with Reaper and Logic. Katerina has her hand raised. Yes.
Yes. Hi, Caitlin.
Hi.
I'm just wondering about the server question. If you have any experience with international projects. We have a string quartet. I'm based in Ireland. The other 3 are based in Belgium.
Okay.
And we are very excited about this, but will it work? Or what server could we, can I link into a Belgium server, or can they link into an Irish server?
You definitely can. There might be some issues with latency is the only thing, but what you could look at doing is finding a server that's kind of halfway between the 2 of you.
Okay.
That might work.
In the middle of the ocean.
Yep. No, just in terms of just slightly closer to you than Belgium, there might be stuff just like slightly closer to the edge of Europe for you. But yeah, no, that it should work.
Okay,
it might be
great.
There might be a little bit more delay, but test it.
We will be in touch with you, Caitlin. Thanks.
No worries.
I think that's a question that is worth considering. I just know from my days playing electric guitar years ago, it didn't happen to myself, but I knew players who had like so many pedals, so distortion pedals, delay pedals, etc. But they were all analog, so they plugged in at one end and they were all connected to each other and they went through in series. And by the time the sound came out the other end, there could be up to a full half-second delay.
Yeah.
And well, those players just accommodated by playing ahead of the beat. Is that, I'm wondering, does anyone have any thoughts on whether that is possible? Because the thing is, I mean, if you read about neuroscience, we all live in the past anyway and only guess about what is happening currently, but we have the ability to actually accommodate, to break the difference between what we're actually hearing and what we think we want to hear. So has anyone any experience of playing over long distances, or any thoughts on the idea of actually simply accommodating our playing and our thinking to a delay?
Well, if you're playing ahead of the beat, the signal will arrive in Belgium on time, but their signal will have been delayed before it can get to you. So it'll be, if there is a delay, that won't cure it. And you're limited by this kind of the speed of light and the servers. So that there are limits to distance. Yeah. That can't be overcome.
And the speed of light from here to Belgium actually is, so I'm in Cork, Katerina is in Galway in Ireland, but I never actually thought as director of IAYO that I would be sitting down calculating speed of light distances between different places, but that's what I have been doing. So you're talking from here to Belgium really is still only about 10-15 milliseconds actual speed of light, but then you're talking about the connectors on all the different devices to get there might be significantly more of a problem.
So if the service in Belgium, it's got to be 15 milliseconds coming here, it's going to take 15 milliseconds to get back again when you play, and the rest of the connections as well. So you just have to try.
I think that's the case, Katerina. It's, you know, take a go really, and at the end of the day, I suppose actually if you want to particularly try that, if the others are actually working on it and you just want to try something like that, we can probably lend you a kit for a few weeks because we have spares with our orchestra. So contact me if you want to borrow one for a few weeks to actually try it out. You can do that.
We might do that. I think I have everything set up for myself, but they don't in Belgium yet.
Yeah. Good.
Yes, Alan, I'd love to borrow. I'll be right over.
It's great. And Christy is in Belgium. She is one of the three who's there. Good. Any other comments or thoughts or questions?
About the Pro Tools question, Black Hole should work. It appears as an audio input or output. So to answer that. There are a few more here. During playing, there's a cracking noise. What could be the reason of that? Well, one possible reason is that the audio is clipping, and another reason could just be noise because of the internet. Sometimes it's just unavoidable. I actually got a similar question, I think, via email about jitter buffer. Yeah, about occasionally hearing a cracking noise, especially with high and loud sound. That's probably your mic is clipping. If it's only happening, or if it's happening more frequently when the noise is high or loud. So just reduce the gain a little bit on your microphone.
Can I interrupt?
Of course.
Just on that crackling sound, because that is the main problem that you'll have with Jamulus. I've been using it for over a year. The crackling is caused by a variation in ping signal. The ping signal can be looked at inside the Jamulus settings window at the bottom right. It tells you how much the ping signal is varying. If your ping signal is varying, let's say, more than 10, 20 milliseconds, that is the sound of a crackle. So what you really have to do if you want to get into Jamulus is you first of all have to eliminate places where your ping is going to be interrupted. You see, I think Jamulus works on something like 300 kilobytes of data passing backwards and forwards to the server. And that's a very small amount of data. But what happens is it's usually parceled into big packets, and then they're sent, and then they go to the server, and then they come back. But when they come back, they can take different routes to get back. And when they take the different routes, that's where the crackle will come from, because that's a mismatch in ping. You have to eliminate this first of all. But could I say, if you want to get into Jamulus also, there's a couple of things you have to look at before you even get started. You have to find out if there's any Ethernet involvement in the signal between your computer that you're working on, the server computer, and the client that you're working with. You have to eliminate that first, because if you don't, it doesn't matter what else you do, you will get crackle on the line. So I would suggest that needs to be done first of all, because for instance, like here I'm at home, right? I can't use Jamulus at home because I have this Wi-Fi dish, yeah, that you know, takes the signal over to a water tower over in the distance and then back. If I want to use Jamulus, I have to go to a house where there's a consistent line, a consistent internet line. Yeah? What you need to do, you just pack up your interface and your microphone. Also, the thing about a microphone, if you're going to use a microphone for a stringed instrument, use one that clips on, because when the person moves away and they're playing or they're talking, everybody wonders where's the person's sound gone. You know? So I'll just mention one or two other things.
Patrick, I actually have a few more questions that I need to answer really quickly because I've got to go in a few minutes, if that's okay. Sorry, thanks. Okay, so there was a question, where is it? In terms of Jamkazam, if you're looking at Jamkazam and you have a bunch of players that are wanting to use it, they will all need a subscription, unfortunately. Particularly if you're wanting to get the video streaming and stuff Cubase LE or Pro Tools instead of Reaper. Pro Tools should work instead of Reaper with Black Hole Audio, yes. Let's see, there's an interface using the Zoom players as an, the Zoom that was being referred to there was actually the Zoom R8 as in the actual interface as opposed to the Zoom as in the software. Can Jamulus be used by musicians of different countries, international orchestra? You can try it. There might be some issues with variation in ping and stuff. And as Patrick was discussing, you need to kind of eliminate that, make the path as quick as possible. And the way you do that in a lot of terms is the Ethernet cable. And I think there's one more. Oh, there's two more. Okay, so when you're playing together, do you need to listen to your instrument sound as produced on the spot or listen to your own sound through the headphones? It's personal preference. I would recommend through the headphones just because you'll hear yourself with everyone, but it is personal preference. And I think, oh yes, a metronome connected to Jamulus. I think there's a method to do that. I wouldn't be 100% certain, but what you can do is if you're using your computer audio as the input, you can set a metronome through there. So if you just have someone who doesn't want to participate, you can play it from in the same way that you use Black Hole Audio to record stuff. And one new message. Oh, there's a thank you. You're welcome. Okay.
Great, thank you. So we're on midday now. So Caitlin, it's time for you to go. So
Yep.
thank you very much, Caitlin. An absolute tornado of information, I think. But the video will be available online, and there will be a booklet as well. And for people who actually want Caitlin to do for them what she does for us, which is take care of this stuff and get people playing online, her contact details will be in the booklet also. So great, thanks very much for everyone for coming along, and we shall see you again soon, I hope.